like they found his journal is the idea, and I just thought that was so creative. Like, wow, Paul kept a journal. It's not the Bible. Everyone gets that. It's not the Bible, but Paul did write it, and that's the idea behind. We'll just talk about how the modern thing feathers in it. So cool.
Well, I invent this seminarian who has a friend who gets involved in a caper where someone has found the memoirs of Paul, and they're pretty much intact, and so they would be incredibly just invaluable. They'd be worth, imagine, you couldn't put a price on them. They'd be worth more than the Dead Sea Scrolls, and Luke would have been involved in helping him write these, and so you've got a friendship there.
Remember the parchments?
Yeah, you got my main character, and you've got Paul writing to Timothy and saying, bring the parchment, above all, bring the parchment.
Above all, bring the parchments. Oh, yeah. What's that?
Yeah, what are they? Nobody ever
I must turn the page to discover more.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's what the Bible says, the parchments, but then you just kind of, that's an example of extrapolation. We don't know what they were, but what if they were Paul's journals? We know Paul wanted them at the end of his life. 2 Timothy 4 says that. And you speculate that those parchments that he requested in the Bible was actually his journal. Something existed, and so the modern story is the story of the discovery of this journal and the chasing and the fear for death and the value of what this would be worth and the fear involved in trying. And I'm telling you, in every chapter, you're reading the modern story of finding these parchments, and you're like, oh, what's next? And you flip the page, and you're like, oh, we're going back to Paul. But then you read a paragraph of Paul, and you're like, oh, yeah, this is my favorite part of the story. And you read the whole thing about Paul. You get to the end of the chapter, Paul, what's going to happen to Paul next? And then you turn to the next page, and you're like, oh, yeah, back to the modern story. And then and back and forth and back and forth, and every chapter ends with, I got to find out what happens next. And that's what makes it easy to read is just, I got to find out what happens.
And part of the thing with the parchments is that Paul has named names. So the leaders of the church are mentioned in his private, because they aren't letters to the churches. They aren't supposed to be for the public. But he's saying to Luke, we've got to protect these parchments. I need them, because if they fall into the hands of the Romans, everybody else is going to be a martyr too, and not by their own choice.
Right.
If they want to choose to stand up and say, I'm with Paul, that's one thing. But I can't expose them. So we need to protect these. So they hide them. And then for 2,000 years they're hidden, but they're now
behind a stone in a prison where Paul was kept before he was executed, and then out they come.